Well, this was always going to be one of the games of the autumn. England against South Africa, a fixture which needs no extra billing, really, but that is still what we're going to do this week on the channel. Welcome back. Looking ahead to the game in this video, we're expecting England team news on Thursday. I think South Africa is the same, but sitting here on a Tuesday, can England beat the Boks following two narrow defeats over the past couple of weekends? I'm going to try and answer that question, and in doing so, get into some of the details of where this England side are currently going wrong, and also the big challenges that I think they will struggle to contend with when it comes to this South Africa side. If you have any views on the matter, the comment section, let me know. Also, like the video and hit that subscribe button as well. So can England beat the Boks? Well, straight out the gate, yes, they're going to be heavy underdogs, but of course it's possible they beat them. Then I suppose the question becomes, how? And I know a lot of you might be scoffing at the idea that England can beat this South Africa side, and I don't know if I necessarily think that they will, but I do think it's possible for a couple of different reasons. Number one, this England side have produced their best performances when they have been written off. Think back to the Six Nations and that game against Ireland, and I was one of the people, I had videos on this channel where I said, I can't see how England win this weekend. And as an Englishman, I was happy, but it came back to bite me. A lot of people in the comments after that saying, pointing that out essentially, because I couldn't see where that was coming from. And I think that is where a lot of people will be with this England side heading into this weekend. They've lost two games on the spin, two games that they will feel they should have won, leading late on, letting the lead slip away. But it is when they've been written off, when they have been down and out, that they produce their best performances. I mentioned the Ireland game. I also think the World Cup semi-final, I know they lost that game, but no one thought it would be a one-point game that England led for a huge amount of it for and got close to knocking South Africa out of that World Cup. So because of that, I think there is something in the psyche of this team that they are almost more comfortable when they're not expected to win, when they're coming up against one of these top nations and upsetting them. The question I have is then, do they adjust the game plan? Because in particular, that South Africa Rugby World Cup semi-final they did. It was quite a specific game plan for a specific assignment. It was box kicks, it was chasing the high ball, it was keeping it tight. Given where they are at the moment and how desperate they are for a result, do they shut everything down and approach it in that way? Or do we see them do a bit more what they did against Ireland, which actually wasn't a game they shut down. They did run it more. They attacked from deep. They scored some great tries in that game. What is the approach of England this week? Maybe it's just a continuation of what they've been doing and trying to execute it even better, but that's certainly going to be a fascinating element of how that pans out on the weekend for me. But there are a number of different areas, and this I think is the difficult thing for England fans at the moment, is what's going wrong. They lost to France in the Six Nations, a game they were winning late on. They lost the two tests in the summer to New Zealand in games they were leading and ended up slipping away. They lost to New Zealand at Twickenham 2 weeks ago, a game they feel they should have won, they were leading, they concede the late try and they miss a drop goal. And then the Australia game at the weekend, which was absolutely bonkers, and Australia scored a brilliant try to finish. But what's going wrong for England in these games? Is it one continual thread, or are there all sorts of different issues that are popping their head up at different times? And I think it's probably the latter. I don't think there's one thing that connects all of those games, but I think you can talk about the discipline in the final 20 minutes. We can talk about whether there's a mental aspect to this. Like, if this England team gets into that final stage of games leading, are they not quite sure how to approach it? Do they need to stay aggressive? Do they sit back a little bit too much, which is something they've been criticised for, and box kick it and go too conservative? Or is it the overall skill level, which I've heard people say after the Australia game in particular? When you look at that Australia team, the way in which they were able to execute, they had one shot to beat England from 40 metres out, and they were able to execute with Lenny Kitao doing chicken wing offloads out the back to release Jorgensen down the left to score a try. Do other teams just have a higher skill level than this England team? We will hopefully get answers to that, maybe not over the next few weeks, but certainly in the Six Nations and beyond, of exactly where this England team are, because without question, it's been a pretty disappointing opening couple of weeks in terms of aspects of their performance and obviously the results. But I'll be honest with you, I say England can beat South Africa. I don't necessarily expect them to. The big concern for me is the Boks power. And they're not just a power-based team. They are a side that have multiple strings to their bow. They can hurt you in so many different ways. But when I look at this South Africa side and this England side, It is the power that I worry with how England are going to compete with it for the full 80, which takes us back to just over a year ago now and that World Cup semi-final, where England did pretty well, went toe-to-toe with them for an hour of that game. Were in the lead, the replacements came on and their scrum got absolutely marmalised. And I look at this England team losing Tom Curry to injury, Ollie Chesham not being there. I just worry how they're going to cope with the Springbok power and if they're able to, ultimately. And it's similar to what we saw, I suppose, in that South Africa-Scotland game. Scotland had opportunities, didn't take them, and the Springboks just proved too strong late on. I suppose that's the other thing to mention here, if we're thinking back to that Scotland game. When England have their opportunities, they have to take them. And they started brilliantly against Australia. They scored the 2 tries, 15-3 up after 15-20 minutes. And I think a lot of people were thinking, oh, this could be pretty one-sided. We might not get much of a test match here. And then we ended up having an absolute classic that will be remembered for Australian rugby for years to come. So I think for England it is one of those occasions, like the World Cup semi-final, like the Ireland game, where they have to produce their absolute best. They have to be pretty close to perfect to be able to win this weekend. They can do it, but are they going to? It's tough at the moment for them. Staring down the barrel of being 3 defeats from 3 at home this autumn is a long way from where they would have wanted to be. They would have realistically wanted to be 2-0 here. They could have been 2-0. They're not. So how do they go up against it against South Africa this weekend? Team news will be fascinating on Thursday. That will give us an insight, I think, into certainly the game plan that England are looking to try and produce. But I think it'll be a great occasion. South Africans always show out for their team. There'll be loads of them at Twickenham. I love going to games South Africa involved at Twickenham. There's so many in London that it's just, yeah, they're in fine voice every single time. I think it's going to be a great occasion. Let me know, what are you feeling about it at the moment if you're an England fan? Can England beat the Boks? I think most of us would agree, yes, they can. Are they going to, though, is a different question, and how do they go about that? And from a South African point of view, what do you make of it? How big a game is this for you? The rivalry between these two teams, the bad blood between these two teams. Is this the biggest game of your autumn? Let me know in the comments. Like the video as well. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in the next one.